Today I'm bringing you a conversation I had with Karena Lout, who is a pastor. She is over a ministry called Refuge. She has such a compassionate heart, and you are going to so love this one. There's going to be so many helpful things in here, and it's around the topic of deconstruction. We're going to explain that in this video, what that is, in case that's a new phrase to you. But for most of you, it's not going to be. You've heard plenty about this. And we want to address this both to those of you who are in the process of looking at your faith and wondering what is real, what is not, along with those of you who are really concerned for people who are going through this. And I'm telling you, there's some gems in here that are going to help you to love well in this process, no matter where you find yourself. Hi, Karena.
Hi.
It's so good to have you here, and looking forward to letting people listen to you, because here's what I know, because I know you so well. I know that people are going to fall in love with your compassionate heart, which you're so good at. And in just a little bit, we're going to talk about a pretty sensitive topic that I think is going to be super helpful. But just so that people get a chance to know you, in case they don't, I was wondering if you could share just a little bit of your, kind of background, your growing up journey, and why that's given you so much compassion for young people, especially teenagers and those like in their 20s, which actually has caused you and your husband Todd to start a ministry called Refuge.
Mm-hmm.
So just share a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks so much, Brent, for having me. And I would say my passion for young people started because in my teen years, I really struggled all throughout my teen years. And before that, I feel like I was a pretty, happy kid. But during those teen years, I was really depressed and got involved in a really abusive relationship from the time I was 14 to 18, and was suicidal and just experienced a lot of pain. And Jesus found me when I was 18 years old, and my whole life changed completely, transformed. And so my passion for young people partly comes from that, just really wanting to be a place to listen and to be a support, because that was just always something that I wanted as a young person, to be seen and to be heard and cared for. So Todd and I started Refuge Tri-Valley. We became an official nonprofit a few years ago. And our passion is just to create a safe place for young people to be vulnerable, to share their hearts without judgment, and to just encourage them to explore creativity, or just other things that they're passionate about. So, yeah, it's a short version.
So good. No, that is a short version, because I know the longer, really astounding version. And you and Todd are both so good at drawing these young ones out and giving them a safe place, as you said. And one of the things I really appreciate about you, Karena, is your vulnerability, that you, because of, the healing of Jesus in your life, because you're so secure in him, you're able to be super real and transparent. And of course, that gives others permission to be the same and to get some of the freedom they need. So just yay God for you two, and so grateful for you. Today, we're going to talk about a topic that you actually are engaged in this topic quite a bit with many of the young people.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the topic of deconstruction.
Mm-hmm.
And in some ways, it's kind of a buzzword these days. It's something that a lot of people are using, but there are people who are watching this who really don't even know yet what we're referring to. So first, I want I wanted to, between the two of us, just talk about what deconstruction is for a moment.
Mhm.
And then I'm hoping we can talk to those who maybe are in that process of deconstruction, and finally to address maybe some of the fears or concerns or anxieties of those who are concerned about ones around them who are going through this process. But
Mhm.
first, let's talk about what deconstruction is. Um, and I would just start out by defining it as a process people are going through by which they're kind of looking through their belief systems,
Mhm.
the ones that many of them carried growing up, or I don't know when they picked them up, but they're starting to look at them and looking at the whole religious system, the church system, if you will, and trying to decide what is it that I really value and what don't I.
Right.
There are just certain things that don't seem to be working for them, and things that don't feel right to them.
Mhm.
And I know that for some of them, they kind of have had a tendency to kind of throw a whole lot out, without carefully looking through it, and others are doing more of that careful looking. But how would you describe deconstruction?
Very, very similar to what you shared. And I would say it's kind of, like you said, taking apart and examining religious systems, beliefs that were never Jesus's heart, that just aren't founded in truth, kind of dismantling those things, and really taking a look at which things am I believing that really aren't founded in scriptures, aren't founded in the real truth, but maybe were imposed by those who meant well, but were maybe um, just fearful, or um, kind of looked at the scriptures without the lens of love. So I'm excited to talk about this because it has felt unsettling to me at times, and I think to many others. And it's become, I think a lot of people feel like it's just become a new trend. But God has just been showing me that this is a real opportunity to lean in and to listen and to see Him move in new ways. And um, it's it's not the fall of a generation like so many, I think, are feeling, that this generation is falling away. But I think it's really a deep dissatisfaction with the way we've been doing things, and just a big cry in it's young people mostly, but I think a lot of people are in this process. But it's a cry for more. And what a great opportunity to see Jesus come and to move like only He can.
Right, right. I appreciate what you're saying, because it's not a terrible thing, especially when we think about. And I think some of us who are older, we kind of forget that each one of us had to make our faith our own as well. It's just that in previous generations, it looked very different.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I'll say about this younger generation, the younger ones, I don't know if it's a certain generation, but the younger ones is they don't hide things as much as we used to.
Yeah.
In other words, if they're feeling something, they're just going to tell you. And
Right.
on the one hand, for some, that might seem a little abrasive or something. But on the other hand, at least you know where they're at,
Mm-hmm.
because they're not gonna BS. They're not gonna
Yes.
fake it.
Right.
They're like, nope, this is the way it is. I don't like it. Here's why.
Yeah.
So, and we're going to talk in a minute about the conversations we can start having with them. But my point right now is just to say, all of us have gone through different ways of deconstructing some things that maybe we received from our parents or our growing up years in church, that later on we said, you know what, there's some really valuable things, but there's some other things I'm not so sure I agree with exactly the way those things were. So yeah, on the one hand, this is actually kind of a part of the journey that we're supposed to go through in order to really embrace Jesus
Right.
for ourselves, which is really what this is all about,
Yeah.
right? Not a set of beliefs, but it's about embracing Jesus. And I had one other thought too about deconstruction, and that is I was thinking about how Jesus himself was trying to help the religious leaders of his day to deconstruct
Mhm.
a lot of what they believed, a lot of
Yes.
what had been passed around from generation to generation. And he's saying, you know what? I don't want you to throw it all away, but there's certain ways in which you have the wrong father. You don't understand his heart. Let me help you relook at this in an entirely different way, but you're going to have to let go of some things to do that.
That's so good. It's so true. So true. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's take a look. Let's talk to the ones listening.
Mhm.
You said a lot of younger ones, but it's sometimes older people. You and I have already talked about how there are times where we're still re-looking at things. I don't know that in one sense deconstruction ever ends, as long as we understand that the point is that we're reconstructing with Jesus and upon the foundation of Jesus what the Father says is true.
Right.
And so we have people going through that. And I would love for you just to talk for a little bit about some of the encounters you're having, some of the stories you're hearing, especially from young ones, why it is that they're considering leaving behind a lot of the teachings of the church and things like that.
Yeah, I think this is such a good discussion, and to really look at what are the reasons, because it can feel so big and scary, just the word in general. But when you get to some of the deeper reasons and start hearing people's stories, you just see, wow, I actually agree with a lot of what you're saying. And so some of what I've heard is, I no longer want to feel controlled, and maybe they've experienced that they felt in the church, or thought maybe Jesus was trying to control their lives. But when we start to define love as limited or controlled or measured, then we definitely know we've lost our way, because his Jesus, he never controls or tries to limit us. So
Mhm.
that's maybe one thing I've heard.
Mhm.
Another is, I think, I'll just speak for younger generation, because that's mostly who I've been talking to. But a lot of what they've expressed is that they want the outcasts, they want the marginalized, and those that they feel have been judged and rejected by the church to be invited in. And I want that too. Jesus has a very, very long table, and he
Yes.
invites all in. And um,
Yes. Didn't he even say, I want you to go out into the highways, the byways, go find the outcast, go bring them into the
yes,
party. So I totally agree.
yeah. And so maybe their experience has been in the church that they don't feel like those ones are included, that they're maybe the out on the outside looking in. Um, Another thing, young people, they want the real deal, and they care a lot about social justice and racial equality. They care a lot about the environment. And so maybe they just don't feel like there's a space for that in the church. And
Hmm.
I can't speak for all. I'm only sharing from my small experience. And
Sure.
so
Sure.
these are all important things that the church can be the
Right.
answer to. So.
And I think too, after the last election
Mhm.
and the kind of the chaos that ensued, and these young ones just looking at the church, meaning followers of Jesus, and I'm just going to say on both sides of the political
Mhm.
spectrum,
Right.
because guess what? There are lovers of Jesus who think very differently politically, in spite of what some may think.
Yeah.
And so I think when these young ones saw the church, uh, with this kind of brutal at times
Right.
and vicious and tearing each other down and tearing each other apart and really holding nationalism at times above the kingdom.
Yeah.
Like I said before, they see these things and they're not afraid to say, "I don't like this.
Right.
I don't know that I want to be part of this." And so that's where each one of us. None of this is meant to be judgmental. In fact, if you've listened to me for any length of time, you realize that a big part of my message is love, is unity, is
Yes.
not us and them taking sides. This is actually not the kingdom. The kingdom is all of us coming together as one, the way Jesus prayed, which is really about love and giving people Yeah, seeing the best in one
Yeah.
another. And a lot of times that wasn't displayed real well. And these young people saw it and said, "Oh, I don't know if I like this."
Right. And Jesus doesn't like it either. I so appreciate your heart, Brent, you and Suzanne, and just such a heart for unity in the body and refusing to ever take sides. I've learned a lot just by watching and being around you both.
Mm.
So,
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm curious. I love, because I just said earlier, I just love your compassionate heart. If you had a chance to talk to somebody who's really, struggling, contemplating I don't know what I believe, I don't like certain things, what would you want to say to that person?
oh, could feel my heart welling up already. Um, I would say to you that Jesus is okay with your questions and even with your doubt. And that, in fact, he loves to just be with you and to sit with you in that. And if you're not okay with Jesus right now, that's okay too. And I would want to apologize to you as a leader, as a mom, as a pastor. Um, I would want to say, I'm so sorry for the ways you have felt controlled or have felt manipulated. I'm so sorry for the pain that you've experienced. And as a mom, I just want to tell you that you are doing so much better than you think you are, and that your exploration, your process is so important. And I validate your pain. And I'm so sorry for the ways that you've experienced that. And I would tell you that there is more on the other side of this.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a father who is always arms wide open, ready to take you in and embrace you, and has never forgotten about you, will never. He's always there waiting, and that's such a comforting thing. Sometimes, as kids, I think one of our biggest fears is if we, misbehave too much, if we go too far away from what our parents want, that they'll somehow reject us. And so I want to say to each one of you, you have a father who will never reject you, never. Um, and just a minute ago, Karina, you said to them, if you're not okay with Jesus right now, that's okay too. And again, some listening on might get a little nervous about that. Some, they might think, how could you say that? You're giving them permission to walk away from Jesus, and that's not the case at all. What we're doing is giving people permission to be where they're at, and to say that if we make people kind of fake it, that's actually not a really good thing. To not let people be consistent with their heart is actually teaching them something that's not very healthy. And this is what I remember, is that Jesus, he said, when I'm lifted up, I'm going to draw all people to myself. What that meant is continuously, lovingly drawing you in, drawing you in. And I know Karina and I both can speak to the fact that there are countless times in our lives when Jesus has drawn us back in and drawn us back in. There's just no way. He just won't let you get too far because he loves you too much. This is why we're saying this to those who are listening, who are struggling. Like, it's okay. It's okay. He's got you even when you don't know that he does.
Mm-hmm.
But we're also talking to those who are concerned
Right.
about ones you love. Maybe you're a parent and you're looking at these young ones, a child, or a grandchild, a nephew, a niece. Maybe it's a friend. You've got a best friend, who you feel like has just gone off the tracks, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is terrible.
Mm-hmm.
So start us off, Karina, on this conversation of what do we want to start saying to those who are concerned or even fearful or anxious? as they're looking on at others, who are kind of look like they're losing their faith?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, first of all, I want to just say that I've experienced that too. I've had times of fear and worry for those in my life, especially young people who seem like they're just going too far. Or they don't want anything to do with Jesus. Um, I felt it too. But one thing I would encourage you to do is to take a step back and just have a conversation with Jesus about this, because you hear him very well. We all can hear his voice. And to ask him, where is this coming from? Um, and I think you said this one time, Brent, a long time ago. You were talking about fear, and fear can feel really big and ambiguous, and it kind of seems like this big thing. But if we take it, like I do this practice where I just look at it in the palm of my hand like this, and I say, okay, what is it that I'm afraid of? It's this in my hand. It's not this big ambiguous thing. And so that might be, I'm afraid that they will never come back to him. I'm afraid that they'll never have a relationship with Jesus again. And so the next thing I would encourage is to stop and then ask Jesus, what do you want me to know about that? He does a really good job of speaking truth, especially when fear and anxiety kind of clouds our vision a little bit.
Right.
And that's important, because we can easily project our own fear and anxiety on the person that we're talking to. Uh, but
Hmm.
it's important to kind of just do a little, look internally a little bit and see what's going on here first. So that's one thing I would suggest.
That's good. That's really good. I'm just going to add to that, that I would encourage people who are feeling anxious about this to use this as an opportunity to listen.
Mm-hmm.
Really listen. I know that we all have along the way tried to learn listening skills, but the truth is, when fear starts rising up, we don't usually use them.
Mm-hmm.
Fear has this way. In fact, a lot of times the way fear comes out is anger.
Right.
We might start getting angry at people. We might start shutting them down. We might start giving threats. Well, God will do this to you if you don't turn around. That's actually not going to help anything other than maybe make their process a little longer
Right.
if we're not really going to listen to them. So yeah, listening, and maybe you can add to this, Karina. It's just some experiences you've had of listening, but I just want to say listening is really mostly about asking really good questions,
Mm-hmm.
next questions, because you really listen to the first things they were saying.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be very open-ended things like, tell me more about what you meant when you said this.
Right.
Questions that are very open-ended like that. Not. This is not a question I'm talking about. What do you mean that? Da, 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 da.
Right.
That's not the kind of questions
Yeah.
we're talking about.
Right.
Those are the shutting you down. I'm afraid, so I'm going to
Yes.
sound angry questions. That doesn't help.
Yeah.
So no, we're talking about, okay, I'm going to set aside my anxiousness and trust Jesus that he's got this person. And I'm going to start listening and caring about your heart.
Mm-hmm.
Because what's going to happen is when they know you care about their heart, now they're going to open up a little bit more. Maybe not initially. Maybe it'll take a little while. But you can be one that is safe for them if you will really listen to their hearts.
Yes, that's so good. Yeah, when people are in the middle of this process of everything that they once knew, they're taking it all apart. Our good theology and our answers are not really what they want to hear, but really, like you said, listening, validating their pain, because sometimes what we contend I can tend to do is, if it's not my experience, then I have a hard time understanding someone else's, or it makes me uncomfortable. But it's so important to validate the pain, whether you think it's justified or not. They're trusting you enough to let you in that space to share their heart, and so that just goes such a long way to really
Yeah.
really hear what they're saying. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
And even in this, Karina and I want to say to those of you who are anxious about others, we understand.
Yes.
We get it. And so you're not wrong for caring so
Mhm.
much that you're feeling anxious, but we're just trying to help you find a better way
Yeah.
to process this in a way that's going to be healthy and actually help that person more. That's our goal right now.
Hmm.
And here's another one I would add, and I would say that love is the long game.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is that love is never wasted. Any ways in which you love and show concern and care, it all matters.
Hmm.
It doesn't mean you're going to see instant results, meaning seeing the outcome you want right away or in a certain amount of time. And here's kind of a different question to ask yourself is if this person is to hang on to a way of thinking that you don't agree with for a very long time, will you still continue to love them and be that safe person?
Hmm.
And I ask that because when I look at Jesus's life, that's what he did. There were people who he loved who weren't ready to change. I think of the story of the rich young ruler who had this interaction with Jesus, and Jesus was actually telling him something to help him and to actually lead him into freedom. But it says in that story, his face fell and he walked away. He wasn't ready just yet.
Hmm.
But here's what I know is he knew that he was loved. That young ruler, he knew he was loved, and he had some things to think about. And I know he did.
Hmm.
We really don't know the end
Yeah.
of that story, but that's where I would say, remind all of you that Jesus's command, he said, I just have one command for you. He says, it's to love one another
Hmm.
in the same way that I love you. He didn't say this. He didn't say, I have a command, and that is, I want to make sure everybody gets their theology right. So I empower you to correct them and judge them.
Mm.
See, that wasn't it. There was only one thing. He said, I want you to love people.
Yes.
Please love people the way I do.
Exactly. I mean, love without an agenda. Love just because Jesus loves through you, goes
Yeah.
such a long way. And another thing I would, which I've had to grow in, is just encouraging people around me to ask questions and to be
Mm,
okay with their uncertainty a little bit. Um,
right.
we are just wired to want the absolutes. And yes, Jesus died and rose again. We know that is an absolute, but there is a lot of tension in the Bible. And what I see young people doing is like, well, how come these two things don't make sense? But Jesus was so good about encouraging his disciples to ask questions and challenging them to see things from his perspective. And
Right.
I always go back to John 6, where Jesus was feeding the 5,000 and turned to Philip and said, where are we going to get all the food to feed these people? And he already knew the answer, but he wanted to stretch Philip's faith. And so
Mm-hmm.
Jesus is more than okay with our wrestle, with our just trying to grab hold of what real truth is. And so I think it's
Right.
good to give people space to walk that out and to maybe be in a little place of uncertainty and uncomfortability, because in that
Mm,
they're going to grab hold of the real deal of Jesus, his love,
right.
his
Right.
grace.
What I hear you saying, Karina, is that wrestling with these issues we have, it's not only okay, it's actually part of the journey.
Yes.
It's part of being real. It's part of putting our heart out there
Hmm.
and giving Jesus permission to show us things we can't see.
Hmm.
But we can't really do that if we're faking it or we're trying to pretend all is well. We actually have to go ahead and be real with him, and that's all he wants.
Yeah.
Is an authentic relationship with us. That's all he's asking for.
Hmm.
He's not afraid of our our questions, or, as you said already, Karina, our doubts, our fears. He's not afraid of any of that.
Hmm. Yeah.
I had one other thought too, and that is to the really back to the people who are struggling right now and maybe doing some deconstructing. I had this thought. I've been a pastor for 35 years, 40 years, and so this is what I want to tell you is I want to ask you. actually, first of all, to try to extend as much grace to other people, and especially leaders who have hurt you. Because this is what I want to tell you, as one who is a leader, I'm just a person.
Mm.
I am one who has my own insecurities. I'm on my own journey. And a lot of times pastors, we also put a front on, and we want to make people think we got it all together because we're supposed to in this
Yeah.
role. But the reality is we're all going on a journey too. And when I think about my journey and I look back 20 years ago, 25 years ago, I was a lot more rigid. I'm going to say religious, but I mean rigid, and I was very zealous for Jesus. I wanted to help people. Believe me, my heart was good. But because I didn't have a really good understanding yet of the Father's depth of his love and of the grace of Jesus, I thought it was my duty to kind of change people, tell them what to do, because I thought that's what pastors were supposed to do. And this is just me being real time to say that was a season of my life. And I actually had to learn from my mistakes to see some of the damage it was doing and say, oh, this isn't right. This can't be right. And I had to then, that drove me back to Jesus pursuing me some more, and discovering the Father's heart in my brokenness and my own brokenness. And then it caused me over time to treat people differently and to really begin to live into Jesus's command to love as he loves, which was very different than what I thought it was. So I just want to be real with you. And I think sometimes it might
Mhm.
help for you to hear from someone like, yep, where I made a mistake. And again, as Karena said, I'm so sorry. I know that I wasn't personally the one that did that to many of you, but just to represent the ones that did hurt you, to say I'm sorry, that truly, that our hearts, most of our hearts are really good. It's just that we don't often have a very good understanding yet of what the truth of our Father, his heart really is.
Right.
So I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, that's so good, Brent. That's so good. It's similar to parenting. I know Todd and I, over the years, we've gone to our kids and we've had to say, "Hey, we didn't respond so well," and
Yeah.
apologize to them. And that just goes such a long way. We're not perfect. We're all, struggling ourselves at times and growing and
Mhm.
deconstructing ourselves and learning what real truth is. So
Yeah. It's
that's
good. So whether that's pastoring, which of course you're a pastor too, Karena, whether that's parenting, we both made some of those mistakes with our kids. The the truth of the matter is that all of us, we have this thing in us where we're trying to get it right and do it right. And the motives are good, but what we really need is Jesus.
yes.
What we really need is Jesus. It's not about getting it all right. It's about drawing in closer to the one who is love,
Hmm.
to the one who is grace, and letting his life flow through us. And that's when we start to represent his heart so much better, whether that's as a pastor, as a parent, as a friend, whatever that is for you listening. It's Jesus. It's Jesus. It's Jesus. It's simply his love in us. And I wish all of us could deconstruct back to that point.
Yes.
Getting back to Jesus and Jesus alone
Yes.
is my heart, my soul, my everything,
Hmm.
and letting him take out the things that aren't of him, and give us that pure love for each
Yes.
other. That's my prayer.
It's so true. I agree. I think for many people during the pandemic, we came to a place where we took a hard look at the things in our lives that felt like clutter, and kind of taking those things apart and really wanting to get back to the simple gospel of Jesus and his love for us. And
Yeah.
so this whole thing, I know it can feel scary. It can even, I think a lot of times it's been misconstrued as a new trend, or that, it's like the new buzzword. But really, I think if we lean in and listen, we're going to see God move. For many young people, it has felt like grief, because they're saying, everything I once knew, I suddenly am just not sure of anything, and it feels painful. So
Hmm.
we can tend to want to rush that process because it might, I know personally it has made me feel uncomfortable. Like, what? You're not reconstructing yet? But I think, when we look at grief, there's no time frame. So really just
Yeah.
giving people that space and knowing
Yeah.
that like you said, I'm going to be there with you, just like Jesus
Right.
is so willing and happy to be with us in the middle of our mess and our pain. In fact, he's
Yeah.
just like, yeah, let me get my hands dirty. Let me get in there with you. I'm not going anywhere.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. So good. Love is the long game, as
yes.
Jesus has shown with us. So, Karina, I'm so happy, thrilled that we've had this conversation and just allowed people to consider some things. Um, and thank you. And I look forward to another time where you and I can talk and we can hear a little bit more of your story and some of the miraculous part of your journey that you didn't get to share today.
Yes, I would love that. Thank you, Brent.
All right.